Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Clueless Capitalists, where we discover interesting startups, interview founders, and help you become less clueless with angel investing. My name is Razi.
And I'm Osman. Welcome to the Clueless Capitalists.
In this episode, we are speaking to HiPajak. HiPajak is an AI text assistant for Indonesians. We have the founder and CEO of HiPajak, Tracy. Welcome to the episode, Tracy.
Hi, I'm Tracy from HiPajak.
All right, so before we go into questions, if you could share your pitch deck, run us through that, and then we'll dive into more questions about HiPajak.
So, is HiPajak, we are an AI tax assistant for Indonesian. This is what happened in Indonesia right now. Current tax rate is quite low. It's just like 10%. And with that 10% only, we already have like the TAM 10 billion USD. But the government now wants to increase it to double it into 23% target tax rate in 2027, and projected TAM will be double, around 20 billion USD. Why we are confidently say something like that? Because in 2023, the government just rolling the integration between national ID and tax ID. So they want everything to be like integrated. And in this 2024, they starting to introduce core tax system. So everything is integrated and can be monitored by the government. And then after that, the government will forcing to increase the tax ratio. But the problem in Indonesia is we have self-assessment tax system. Unlike the other country, we require to decide which tax we need to pay and then how much we need to pay, and we make the tax planning by ourselves. But obviously not everyone understand taxation in Indonesia, and we just have like around 6,000 certified tax consultant, and not every one of them doing like the practice of the tax consultant. Whereas we have like 215 million taxpayer, whether it's workforce or the enterprises, so it doesn't make sense for the tax consultant to cover all of these taxpayer. And also the prices of the tax consultant is quite expensive, so also for the SMEs and individuals it doesn't make sense to pay the tax consultant. So this is the problem in Indonesia. There's a lot of manual and complicated work. For example, like this, for invoice you need to categorize it one by one, and every invoice have different type of taxes you need to check, and then you change it into the journal. After that, you need to cross-checking between purchase order, invoice, and bank statement. After that, you have like multiple tax administrative process happening in Indonesia, and you need to do it monthly, and you need to do it also for yearly. So it's quite wasting of time for the business owner or the freelancers. So with HiPajak, we can do like 95% of efficiency. So we are cutting all of the processes. The taxpayer just need to input the original format, upload into our system, whether it's the chat base or in the dashboard, whether it's invoice, bank statement, or anything related to the revenue and expenses. And then we are automatically making the tax filing. So currently this is our metrics. Last month we have revenue 77,000 USD, and we have like almost 3 times higher comparing to last year. So we can manage to increase ARPU by almost 4 times, and then our CAC only $55, whereas the revenue per customer is around $250 until $300 monthly, and our retention rate now is 97% with LTV 11,000. And this is our business model. We have 2 type of business model. The first one is the subscription based tax consultant. It's up to 10,000 USD every year, and then we have referral fee add-on is 3% from the transaction fee. So we have like a partnership with the financial services. And the last one, verificator, is like the one that we are still developing. It's like integration with the banking. And this is the team. I'm Tracy. I have background in finance and tax, more than 10 years. I was in Toyota Astra Finance, the biggest multi-finance company in Indonesia. And then Sukma, he have more than 20 years experience in technology. He started from the biggest technology platform in Indonesia, and after that he have like several projects, both private and government. So right now, currently we are raising fund for 500k. We have 50% committed, and use of fund is for product and sales. I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy, for running us through this. Just before we go into questions, so HiPajak is only targeting business owners then, businesses and not individuals.
SMEs and individual non-employee, so the gig economy worker.
Okay, and how did you get started? So what's the origin story? Like, how did you and Sukma get together and decide, hey, this is there's a need for this and we should work together and build this?
So at first the stories began like actually like I really like taxation since I was in the university. So my background is economic management, is included taxation in Indonesia. After that I was in Toyota Astra Finance. Then I'm helping family business. And at that time we have like taxation problem. So we already paid the tax. At that time like everything is very manual in Indonesia. So we losing like the payment proof. The one who is losing is the one who is giving the job. So in Indonesia, the one who is paying the tax is the one who is giving the job. But at the time, like the price of the tax is very expensive, so we cannot afford to pay again. So we going back and forth to the court like 2 years. So there was where my father and me thinking about like, hey, taxation should be like easier than this. And we need to make some automation. That's why we are starting HiPajak. And then Sukma is like a family friend, and at that time he have like digital marketing business company and agency. So we're talking. At first we just talking about, hey, we want to build this. He have like the skill for the technology, and then at that time we thought like, hey, we can work together, some stuff like that. And then they said like, hey, we want to become the partner of HiPajak. So they become like one of the shareholder and co-founder of HiPajak.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, I mean, just Tracy, when we're looking at this particular problem, most people don't want to pay tax. And if I look at places like Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, their biggest problem is just, even if there is a mechanism to pay tax quite easy, people will try to circumvent that. So what's really driving this in Indonesia? Is it, because your business is obviously doing pretty well, there's demand for it. What's unique here in terms of the demographic, the intention to pay tax? Can you just elaborate a little bit more on it?
Obviously, like everyone wants to pay as cheap as possible for the tax, right? But what happened in Indonesia right now, like the enforcement happening from the government. So that's why I said like the national ID and tax ID become integrated. So they become like single integration. That's why it's forcing people to pay the tax. One of the example, if you want to open the bank account, you need to bring your national ID because it's already like integrated. So it's easier for the government to monitor it. Before everything become manual, they need to search one by one, so the enforcement is not that high. But currently, because of the enforcement of that integration, and also they are introducing new system, it become like more. And also outside of that, like when the SMEs or individual have like a businesses with the big companies, they require the invoice and everything to be like proper and compliance. So that is the other things that enforce the taxpayer to pay the tax.
Okay. And when people are looking to pay tax, do they come looking for you, or are you looking for them in terms of what's their motivation? Is it because they want an easier way to pay tax, or are they looking for a more robust way of making sure that they pay just what they're owed and what they owe? Can you explain how you're recruiting new customers?
Yeah, so actually we are like a tax consultant for our customer. So what we did is not just merely for the tax payment, but we helping them before that. So we helping them from the tax planning, decided like which tax they need to pay, and helping them to pay the tax as efficient as possible. Means like they can pay like cheap but legal way, stuff like that. And after that, like we are helping also with the administrative things. So we are one-stop solution. So currently we have mix like the customer, whether they are coming to us because word of mouth, and whether we do like the brand awareness, we talking in the social media and they are coming to us too. That's the things that how our customer coming to HiPajak. And then also outside of that, we have B2B2C partnership with the financial services and banks, and that's one of the things that we do to acquire customer.
How strict is the enforcement when it comes to smaller businesses? Like, sometimes like what Osman is saying, right? We just want to, when I looking as an outsider into like the developing world, it seems that it's difficult for countries to enforce tax, or you can ignore it and nothing really much will happen depending on how much is the tax that you're owing or how much the tax that you're liable for. Is it the same in Indonesia?
We have new law in 2020 and they make it official 2022 if I'm not mistaken. So this law is enforced people, they divide it into two when the government giving fine to the taxpayer. The first one, if you just like paid then less than usual, it's categorized as administrative fine. So it's cheap, it's just 1%, 2% and maximum 24 months. But if the government find that you are not paying the tax, they categorize you as a fraud and they will fine you start from 150%. And taxation in Indonesia, it can be the end of the process is jail. It's not like just like fine, but you can go to the jail because of the tax. We have like special police for taxation. So that's the way government enforce taxpayer. So for example, like 10 years ago, Indonesia have registered taxpayer just 2 million. But right now, currently, we already have like 50 until 60 millions.
Okay. And when you say percent, what we're measuring the percentage of? Is it the percentage of total income? Is it the percentage of tax liability? Can you just explain that?
It's the from tax liability.
Okay. So if I owed $1,000 of tax, the fine would be 1% of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. And your transaction fee, you mentioned it's 3%. So that's 3% of whatever tax has to be paid.
No. So for our business model, it's different. That's the fine that I'm talking is from the government revenue stream for us. The range is between $200 until $1,000 monthly base. It's what our customer paying. So what you talk, Osman, like 3%. We have like partnership with financial services. For example, they are giving loan, and from that loan, if our customer succeeded to pass the everything, we get like 3% from that transaction.
Ah, got it. Okay, makes sense. And if we were to look at the breakdown of your revenues, can you give an indication of what that breakdown is? Is it how much is from consultancy? How much is it from the bank in terms of commissions?
We just like break down into two, the subscription base and we categorize as one per transaction. So right now, 90% of our revenue coming from the subscription with retention 97%. And the rest 10% is coming from the pay-as-you-go or just one-time transaction.
Okay. And all of these different things, what's your actual North Star metric that you're looking at?
Our North Star metrics actually is like the retention for us and not the revenue itself.
Okay, so at 97% retention, that's the number that you're looking at. Are you happy with 97% or would you prefer it to be a lot higher? I mean, obviously higher, but what's your target here?
Actually, like the highest number is 100%, right? But sometimes like the target is I want to be like 100%. But in our case, for example, it's not because our customer is not using us anymore, but because they are closing their business or stuff like that. So there's nothing that we can do about that, right? So that's why like our retention rate is really hard if we want to get like 100%. So for us, like 97, 98% is already really good for us.
Brilliant. Okay. So the attrition is really through natural attrition rather than dissatisfaction with the service. That's good.
So for us, the service excellence is very important.
I was going to ask, right, in terms of the whole process, how automated is it? Like, is there a need for a HiPajak employee to speak to every one of these customers, or is it self-serve? Like, so how does it work?
Currently, we have still like 50-50 between the automation and the manual process. But for the everything that one-time transaction, everything is already automated. But for the subscription based, we still have like 50-50%. So there's a tax consultant still talking to the customer. Why is that? The first thing is like because Indonesian really like have the human presence on it. So we are still making a human on that. And the second one is we are on the development process. That's why we are raising fund. We want to make like that the rest of 50% manual become like just 20% manual and the rest is automation. That's what we are doing.
And how big is the team right now to handle all of these customers?
So for handling the customer, just 6%. 6%.
Okay, and this doesn't include Sukma and yourself?
No.
Okay, got it. I was just looking at this is a simple Google search, right? According to Google, the corporate income tax is a flat rate of 22%. And then for individuals, it says 5%. So seems to be quite straightforward. You could explain to me how complicated exactly it is?
It's actually misguided. Like, yes, from the profit, for the income tax for the companies, 22% from the profit, but there's several layers. You can have like 50% discount if you have like a certain revenue. And then outside of that, for company, it's not only the income tax. You have other taxes that you need to pay, and you need to see from each of the invoice whether it's revenue or the expense you make. So it's not that simple. For example, if you renting the office, you have like another tax 10%, and then if you have revenue more than 4.8 billion, you are starting to pay the VAT. Right now the VAT is 11%, but the VAT itself, some of the industry have like the incentive, so you need to be very knowledgeable about the tax. And outside of that, Indonesia, we have like national taxation, provincial taxation, and then the last one is municipal or city taxation. So sometimes the national, provincial, and municipal overlapping each other. So if you don't understand, you could pay more than you should. And then outside of that too, like the income tax for the enterprise is not like only 22%, but you have like 0.5% for the SME with certain requirement. But for the individual employee, it's 5% until 35%. It's not flat, but 5 until 35%. Well, it's depending on the income you get. But also in Indonesia, we have the law called that benefit outside the salary. It must be included also in to your income. So it's not as straightforward as the Google said.
Yeah, hearing from you guys, I can understand how complex it is. Are there instances where you overpay your tax and then afterwards the government calculates on their end and they reimburse you? Because you mentioned that maybe the municipal, the provincial, and the national, they might overlap. So are there instances where they do refund you if you overpaid, or that's on the taxpayer to figure it out that they've overpaid and then to go and get their money back?
Actually, there is a law that for the refund, but in Indonesia itself, it's almost impossible to do that. Except you are very, very sure of all of your compliance, of all your administrative works. You are very good, very secure. If not, it's almost impossible. But when we want to do like the tax refund, the government will do audit to your company or yourself. Usually, most cases, 99% of the cases, it turns out you will pay more. They will find something to, hey, you're not paying this yet. Suppose you pay this, so there's fine. So then you get like the refund. You at the end you will pay more than you. So usually like Indonesian people doesn't like to do like refund, except for the amount is very big and you are very sure of your compliance. So what we are doing is more on the tax planning. So before we decided everything, we need to plan carefully.
Wow. I mean, and this is a whole different conversation and topic, right? Because I know that in the UK and in Europe, the tax rates are usually very high, but generally there's an expectation that if you do overpay, the government will actually try and return that money to you because the numbers don't add up, and it causes a problem for the tax authorities as well. If the numbers don't add up, they can't reconcile their own numbers. I've received checks out of the blue from the HMRC in the UK for having overpaid my income tax during one particular year, and I didn't even know. So I find it really quite interesting that if you go and try and investigate, that you could potentially be penalized for it as well. They'll find something else to kind of claim that tax back. If we were just to look at your cohort analysis of customers in terms of the CAC, LTV, all of those kind of metrics, can you just run us through those just to give us an idea of how your growth and trajectory is?
Okay, so for the subscription base, it's $55 per customer, whereas the ARPU is ranging between 200 until 1,000 monthly. But the most customer that paying to us is usually $250 until $350 monthly. But for the pay-as-you-go, the one-time transaction, the CAC is $30. But we categorize pay-as-you-go this as more on the brand awareness for us, because this like top funnel for us to upselling customer to the next subscription.
Okay. And when you say that it's $55 to do that, is that from like advertising, or is it the actual onboarding process? Where does that cost come from?
We mix everything between like ads and then direct selling and other effort that we are doing. We are averaging that, totaling that.
How many customers do you have right now?
For the users that already use HiPajak, we have more than 1 million users. But for the retail pay-as-you-go, it's still like ups and down every month. It's around 250 until 500 transactions per month that paying to us. And then for subscription, we have like around 100 subscription customers monthly.
So when you see there are already 1 million now, so these are 1 million downloads. Are these is there a free option within HiPajak, the 1 million that you're talking about?
Yeah, we have a free option for them.
I'm also just thinking about the risks when it comes to a business like HiPajak, right? Just thinking out loud, if Indonesia aims to try and become an easier place to do business, I'm wondering like, will some of these complicated tax requirements be reduced, or will they be consolidated? What kind of risks are there for your business at this point of time, Tracy?
So consolidate it or make it easier like one only, it's almost impossible in Indonesia, because like the local government, like the region and everything, needs to have like a independency. So they need to have like a revenue of their own. So it cannot be like centralized. So the system will be always like US based, I think, or Indian based, compare not like a Singapore or European. The risk is something like that. But and also like the other risk is usually like maybe we have a very often change the regulation, so we need to be as fast as possible to update, to include it in the technology. That's what the risk in business like HiPajak.
How are the competitors like? How are you positioned when it comes to the competitors?
Actually, HiPajak, we saw that we don't really have a direct competitor, but we have like indirect competitor. Our indirect competitor is conventional tax consultant, but their weaknesses is they don't have like automation, so they rely on the manpower. And the other indirect competitor is the tax SaaS company, but they are more focusing on the corporate. And the one who's using their system must be understanding about at least basic tax or accounting. So HiPajak is like the mix between tax consultant and this SaaS company. So that is our two indirect competition.
Got it. Well, I guess now that you have Sukma on your team, get acquiring customers and doing all the marketing and customer acquisition should be in very good hands. So in terms of plans to acquire more paying customers, to increase the amount of transactions, what is the plan looking like for the next few months and for 2025?
Actually, like we already find like the most fit recipe to going to the customer, but our main problem is now like because our process is still 50-50, so we are still like dependent on the human. That's why we are wants to pushing on the product development side, so we can sell to more customer. So our product ready once we are doing like the marketing, and then also like the other things is we have like a sweet spot of pricing, $100 monthly. We can acquire more customer with that start from $100 monthly. And then once we already done that product development, what we will do is like we do again the digital marketing. Before, like we just like doing like organically like SEO, we will combine with the SEO and ads. And then also we do like we will more aggressive with the partnership, B2B2C partnership with the financial services and banks and communities. That's what we are doing. And we will, the last one, we need to do like a direct selling, account management based sales.
Got it. Okay. I understand now that once the product is ready, then you will go and acquire more customers. Otherwise, if you have more customers now, means you have to hire more people beyond the 6 that you have, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So you mentioned to us that you've already you're looking to raise $500,000. You've already got 50% committed. So for the remaining $250,000, what is the minimum check size for the investors who might be interested?
$50K USD, the minimum check size.
And where is HiPajak is registered in Indonesia?
Yep, we are registered in Indonesia, and also like we have incorporation in Singapore also.
And what's I guess you're raising via a safe note, right?
Yep, we are raising safe note.
And what is the valuation cap?
It's 5 million.
So I think in terms of your fundraising effort, all of this fundraising is done on the Singapore entity, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's like investing in the holding company here in Singapore. Just wanted to make sure on that. And what does the cap table currently look like? Who's on the cap table right now?
Actually, we have 2 angels outside the co-founder, and then we have like VC before is 9082 Ventures, and then right now currently we are just raising again, and the rest. So for the previous round, it's just around less than 10% from investor, and the rest of 90% is still from the co-founder.
Okay, so it's a 90% ownership. And these investors, are they invested in the Indonesian entity or in the Singapore entity?
In the Singapore, but they are still safe node, right? They are not like converting yet, but in the Singapore entity.
Got it. Okay, understood. And when is the round likely to close?
We are targeted on December. We're closing the round.
Okay, and with a 50,000 minimum entry ticket, I take it that you're looking at very specific types of investors based on that ticket as well, or like, for example, if people coming from PwC or one of the big four, are there any preferences to the types of investors that you want to bring in?
We actually like prefer if you have like expertise that can help us. It's will be better for us, like in the same industry or the skill that you can help us with. For example, like product development, marketing, or either like you said, like from the taxation, you have like a global expertise. We are open to that.
And when is the demo day? Do you know when you're going to be doing the demo day with Accelerating Asia?
If it's not like changing, it's around 4 until 5 December.
Great. And so this is probably a good time to mention to everybody that HiPajak is part of the Accelerating Asia cohort 10, and some of the startups that we've spoken to, they'll all be presenting in person in Singapore in December. So keep an eye out on the Accelerating Asia website for that date, and get yourself invited along to meet Tracy in person.
Yeah. See you in Singapore.
One thing that I don't recall hearing about is from the 78,000 revenue that you mentioned that you have made, I think one of these recent months. What is your margin on all of these?
So for the net profit is 15% until 20%, the net profit. But for the margin, if you just said like gross, we are still like 50 until 60%.
Okay. I mean, and this is kind of interesting. Just in reflection rather than a comment, it's when we look at some of the other startups within the cohort, there's Chaya, for example, which does microinsurance in Bangladesh. Again, this is a product which most people wouldn't normally say, hey, I want insurance, solve my problem. It's being driven largely by the requirement from government, and this is another one where there is a requirement from government to pay your taxes and pay them on time and pay them accurately and be compliant. There isn't an option to do nothing. You can try and do it yourself and run the risk of paying more, but there's no way you can really guarantee that you'll be paying what you actually owe if you do it yourself. Whereas coming through a service like either through a tax consultant or through HiPajak, you're at least in a better place to actually know what you're compliant to and what you're not compliant to. So these are the kind of things where you have a defensible moat in many ways, because you're protected and you're driving customers predominantly through a market demand that's been driven by legislation. And so, yeah, there will be competition, obviously, in the future when people begin to realize this, but you are actually one of the first movers that are able to automate a lot of this. So it seems like by the time other people decide and catch on, you'll have already built a customer and a brand loyalty that, to be honest, most people don't want to switch once they're comfortable with a way of doing things. So it's taking full advantage of that, and I think that's a pretty important thing to note here.
Thank you, Osman. Great insight.
And I think both when me and Razi were talking about some of the services separately. When we talk about startups and which ones do we invest in, which ones don't we invest in, sometimes we're looking at the market driver. Is this typically on LinkedIn, you'll see loads of people saying, is this a vitamin or is this a painkiller? Anything that solves your tax problem is a painkiller, actually. It's not a vitamin.
I just saw it from Craig.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And in this case, if you get your taxes wrong, it can be a huge problem, especially businesses. I've noticed that once you pay your taxes incorrectly, once you get audited every year for many years to come. So it's not something that you want to do and do it wrong. And with this gig economy, burden that's coming through as well, there's so many people in the gig economy now. It's completely changed from where it was before. So that demand is definitely there. So it's definitely, when we're looking at startups, we're looking at, is it a growing market, and is there a demand, and is there a niche? And you've got the growing market, you've got the demand that's been driven by legislation, and it is a niche. You are looking at these specific cohorts within the demographic. So I definitely think there's something there.
Even in markets like Singapore, right? Like if you read the newspapers, every once in a while you will see people going to jail or paying significant fines because they underdeclared their tax. So like there's two examples. There's this durian sellers, these two brothers who run a very popular durian shop. They made millions, but then they declared their income to be like less than $100,000. There's another one which is a curry puff franchise, pretty big one, clearly makes a lot of money, but they declared a profit of like 10K or something. So they underdeclared their tax significantly, and unfortunately for the owner, he had to go to jail because of. So even in a small place like Singapore, the tax authorities sometimes have to step up enforcement, or even just double check that you are declaring your income correctly. Yeah.
And even for those who are, like for me, we're not, my own startup isn't making money, but just being compliant to the tax regime, it is difficult and it's worrying. So even if you feel that there's nothing to declare, you are still worried about, have you declared it correctly? So you still engage with a tax consultant just to say, have I covered everything? Because if it's wrong, I'm going to blame you rather than like it's on me.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we have this corporate secretarial services, we have these accountants that we outsource everything to, and then it gives us peace of mind, right? So I guess with HiPajak, same thing. You work with HiPajak, you pay the subscription, you have peace of mind that everything is in order and everything is compliant. Peace of mind.
And I think in general, I don't feel the majority of people don't want to avoid paying tax. They see the benefit of it. Roads, healthcare, schools, education, all of those things provide benefit to society. People want to contribute in the main. It's just making sure that they do it in the most compliant and easy way possible.
It's still like indirect, but like it's like a fun fact in Indonesia. Like before, like the older generation really doesn't want to pay tax as low as possible. But in this new generation, the younger generation, they are more willing to pay tax, but they don't want to make it complicated. That's the only problem for them.
No, that's true.
Thank you, Tracy, for bringing us through the work that you're doing with HiPajak and how you're making tax, giving Indonesians peace of mind with your startup. And for those of you who've been watching, if you enjoyed the episode, please remember to subscribe, to comment, and to share the episode. And if you're looking to invest, do look out for Accelerating Asia's demo day that's happening, where you can meet Tracy and some of the other startups that we have spoken to in person. Thank you.
Thank you, Rafi and Osman.